Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk on service quality and the gaps model. So I would love to identify not one, but two, not two, but three, not three, but four gaps in your service qualities that will determine the fulfillment of the customer expectation and the company's expectation if the gaps are fulfilled. Now, let us understand what the dimensions, and these are the five dimensions that I would love to go around it. One is that of assurance, next is of empathy, and then the reliability quotient that comes around it. It's a responsiveness. If you have a query, how do you answer it, how do you respond to it, and the tangibles associated with it. So assurance, empathy, reliability, responsiveness, and tangible things is what the dimensions of service quality is all about. It what are we talking about by reliability? Is the service, whatever we have decided to promise to the customer, did we deliver it? Now you need to understand what are your feedback, how many positive, how many negative, how many service failures, and so on and so forth. Similarly, for assurances, it is your quality, it is your knowledge, it is your courteousness, it's your relationship between you and your customers, and the customers and the organizations. Now, if you have the positive intent, it will be the feel good factor, the goodwill that will built up. Otherwise, it's the other way around. Similarly, for tangibles is the aura, the ambience that you provide during the service quality. That is what we are looking into it. Responsiveness is willingness to help, willingness to respond if there are any query, if there are any complaint, if there are any issues that we are looking into it. Last but not the least thing is an individual attention that needs to be paid in terms of empathy. You are identifying yourself as one and as the customer. So you need to understand the pain points and how to get it across. Now this is a gap. This particular pic that I have put it in this video is the destination probably of the customer is going to this junction, but there is a pit or a valley that comes around it, and he or she is probably wondering how to cross. Here comes an opportunity. This is the gap that we go around it. People might say, what opportunity? Yes, there's an opportunity for you to service the or provide service to the customer in transporting him from this place to this place via bridge, or helping him the other way around. In either way, this is a gap that needs to be filled. There is a requirement for the customers, and that is what you can go around it. What should you be doing around? So let us understand the gaps, the difference between the perception and expectation. So I pay value for money, I'm expecting some money, I'm expecting some thing in return. But if there is this expectation and then there's this perception, the actual thing goes wrong, it doesn't match perfectly, means there's a gap. There's a gap between the customer's expectations and the customer's perceived services as such. Now, this is what I call customer gap. Now, let us understand gap number one, and I'll tell you what are the various gaps that comes around it. This is what we are looking into it. More often than not, customer is expecting something which you are not aware of. That is what we need to understand. The perception of the customer expectation you are not aware of as a company. So there is something called a gap that comes around here. This is gap number one. Similarly, not selecting the right design that comes around here. Excuse me, right design and standards thereby. So what are we looking into it? See, the customers is in this fold and the company is in this fold. The customer expectation of service design. Probably you have ordered a pizza, probably you have ordered a train tickets, probably you have ordered a theater movie tickets, all service industries. But the movie tickets you might have got at a fag end of a seat, the seat which was uncomfortable, or the seat where you've not got given an aisle seat perhaps in the somewhere on the middle. People are interrupting you, your viewing pleasures is being interrupted. Now what has been, is the ticket price of the aisle seats and your seat different? Probably not. So this is what needs to be understood. Customer driven service designs would be something where customer wants the best possible seat in the theater, the best possible seat for the train journey, the best possible service in a restaurant. But what about the company's perception? Company's perception would be, yes, the movies will be shown, the food will be served, the journey will commence and probably end on the right time. But in between, whatever the customer experiences, this is what we call as a gap number two. That is customer driven service design and company perception of customer expectation. Now allow me to give you what is gap number three that comes around it. Continuing with the same diagram, it is service delivery. It is service delivery and customer expectation of service design and delivery thereby. So the actual delivery and what was expected out of it. And that is what the gap is all about. This is gap number three. Absolute three gaps that we talk about it. Allow me to give you the gap number four, which is all about your promises and all about your performances. You have promised something and you have delivered less. If you have promised something and you have delivered more, probably people are delighted. It's a wow moment that are around it. But expectedly, there is this gap that comes around it. What was externally communicated and what was a delivery? What was promised and what was done? So these are the four gaps that I wanted to go around it. Let me understand those and amalgamate everything into the service delivery model. You will be able to understand what exactly is the customer gap that comes around it, the gap one, the gap two, the gap three, the gap four. These are the four gaps. If you fulfill it, your job is done completely. That is what we should be going around it. So let me allow me to explain what is the key factors leading to customer gaps. First is your expectation of the customer. First is the perception of the customer that goes around it. Now you need to understand as a service provider, not knowing what customer is expecting, exactly spell it out. Exactly let the customer tell it to you what is expected. If possible, paraphrase it. Not selecting the right service design or the standards per se. Now, everybody's expectation of a service would be completely different. Somebody might want a prompt service, somebody might want a laid back service, somebody might want a wonderful pampered service, perhaps. So, these is the right service design. This needs to be noted down. Provider gap three is not delivery the service on a standard basis. So I come to a service industry, I experience a service from a company. Next time I come to the same company for the same service and my experience is different. Again, it's a complete no-no. Last gap is not matching what you have promised and what you have been delivering around here. This is what been expected. The key factors leading to gap number one is inadequate market research oriented. Absolutely, what is the prevalent culture? What is the attitude of the people in the vicinity of the service business? You need to understand those things. You need to undertake a market research and probably try to gauge the sentiments of the public. Next is lack of upward communication. Now, this is where the difference between the management and the customers, they are not communicating correctly, probably. And this insufficient communication is creating a gap. Probably this is where this needs to be fulfilled, or probably the other way around. There are no gaps, there are proper communication, but their communication via some media, some person. There are so many levels of communication that goes around it. So if you introduce a lot many levels, I'm sure a communication gets distorted. The impact loosens is vitality, as the case might be. So this is what we should be going around it. Talking about the expectation. Now, insufficient relationship focus. This is what we are talking in terms of marketing segmentation. You are not properly segmenting the market and putting a focus as the desired by the segment. You cannot, you probably a person who is in a full flow and of a career in the age of 30 to 40 or 45 probably, and this person is all busy up, all tied up, and he or she has come to a service establishment to avail a service, wants it quick and prompt. But somebody who's retired tries to avail the same service. He or she doesn't want it promptly. He or she wants to have it in a lavish fashion. Why? Because they have ample amount of time to spend. So that is what market segmentation is all about. The younger generations and the older generation. Focus on the new customer rather than relationships customer. Now this is the time when you start building loyalty with your customers, building relationship. The moment you think the customer has been hooked up onto your business, can you focus into the new customer? Try the same way and probably build a wonderful relationship. Inadequate service recovery, lack of encouragement to listen to customer complaint, failure to make amends as on when on possible, and no appropriate recovery mechanism in place. Service failure, what happens? Service complaint, what happens? How do you satiate the customer's demand out in this in such kind of scenario? And this is what we need to understand as far as service recovery is concerned. Let me tell you about the gap number two, the standards, the poor service design. Everybody's expectation of the service design is completely different. And if this service design is completely different on the basis of customer, it is okay probably because everybody would like to have a tailor-made service design. But if the service design is not prompt or equal from the company's end, things will be at doldrums. So you need to understand what is the service development process, delivery process. It cannot be vague, it cannot be undefined. You need to properly design it so that there is a built-in expectation. You need to design it such as there are no failures, there are no chances of failures altogether in your service positioning. Absence of customer driven standard, as the case might be, lack of customer defined standards will only create chaos out there. Absence of process management, absence of customer requirement, absence of customer feedback. This is what we require as far as service delivery is concerned, service quality is concerned. Inappropriate physical evidences and service scape. For gap number two is to develop tangibles with the customer expectation. Service scape designs that does not meet customers and employee need. Inadequate maintenance and updating of the service scape needs to be done every now and then to be kept up against the competitors and the dynamic environment. So inappropriate physical evidences should be discarded. In fact, physical evidences, service care should always be updated, upgraded. If possible, have a new mode so that everybody has a different kind of, what should I say, unadulterated, absolute heavenly experiences altogether for every customer. So that is what we look into it in gap number two. Now, let us understand the factors leading to provider of gap number three. That is human resource policies. If they are not appropriate, if right people are not been appointed, if the people do not have that genuinity people skill, now that needs to be understood. Or otherwise, they have the people skill, but they have been laden with a lot of work, and probably a person is doing not his or her work only, but probably another person's or two persons' work has been done by only one single person, two or three persons. That is what poor employment is all about it. That is what role conflict is all about it. A person, an employee who does not have the requisite qualification, requisite education, will have a poor technology fit. These are inappropriate evaluation, or should I say, they are recruiting low-skilled employees just because the compensation cannot attract the right kind of employees. That is what we call about the deficiency in human resource policies. Customers who do not fulfill the role is another fact, wherein the customer needs to be educated about their products, about the services, about what is expected. Customers negatively affect each other, and that is what service delivery is all about it. Then comes what I say is the intermediaries, the levels that comes in a service delivery. Your intermediaries, your supply chain partner, they might not adhere to the principles or the fact of how to do the things. They might not adhere to the standard which have been prescribed. This is what is a conflict as far as the channel objectives are concerned. You will have less of a control on your intermediaries, on your channel partners, about what to do and how to do and what they will be doing around here. That will lead to a lot of confusion and negativity among the minds of your customers. Tension among empowerment and control, probably about money out here. Failure to match supply and demand. This is what we look around it. And how do I take it? What comes around it? It's your failure to smooth peaks, value of demand, inappropriate customer mix, over reliance on price to smooth demand, as the case might be. And that is what we are looking out here. So you have an excess demand and less of a supply. There's a mismatch. You have an overtly supplied and less demand. Again, there's a price mismatch. There are peaks and there are valleys of demand. You need to address them, and probably this is where you can hire or circulate your staff as far as their employment or shift is concerned. The rotation policies, in case of it's the cyclical nature of your service, probably in weekend the business picks up and weekdays it goes down. You can give them the weekly off during the week or any of the weekdays and not during the weekends. Now, you should be able to manipulate your HR policy so that not only your customers are satisfied, but also your internal customers, as in this case, your employees are also satisfied thereby. So, lack of integrated service marketing communication, this is one way to follow it up. You have to have proper communication, be it print media, be it absolutely internet media, be it newspaper media, whatever you look into it, be it videos, whatever you're communicating, you should be parallel. They should be complementing each other. And in case if there are conflicting information, conflicting communication, this is only going to create much of a confusions among here. There would there would be the doubts in the mind of the customer. So absence of strong internal marketing program is one of the lacunae for the gap number 4. Ineffective management of customer expectation, absence of customer expectation management through all forms of communication, lack of adequately educating these customers per se. So gap number 4, let me wind it up with this particular slide, is over promising. Never do this. Just you end up over promising in the case, in the hope that you get the business, but eventually what happens is you over promise and you probably deliver under deliver. As a result, what happened, as such the customer was not interested in your product, but because you have promised, over promised, he or she must have undertaken your services and eventually realize whatever was promised was not been delivered. He or she, the customer, will be absolutely in a negative connotation as far as company is concerned, will never come back, never give a try to your company services again. That is something which is very bad. So never over promise in your advertisement, in your personal selling, or for that matter in physical evidences. Next would be inadequate horizontal communication between salespeople and operation people, between advertising and operation people, between the policies and procedures of one branch with another SBUs. Everything should be in tandem. They should work in sequences. I expect the same service for a brand in place A and same service for that same brand in place B also. There cannot be differences in policies and procedures. If it goes around it, that means inadequate horizontal communication. Your There is a big gap that needs to be addressed altogether. With this, I come to an end of this presentation. Thank you for watching this video till the end.